the faculty became very involved in it, and there were a lot of what we called at the time young Turks, young professors who were progressive and who were changing the character of the faculty. I think again they got wrapped up. There were a lot of professors who were in their late 20s and their 30s, and they got wrapped into the cultural change like everybody else.
In my time, no, they were not. They were not supportive. I mean, you had individuals, of course, but as a body, no.
There were many professors that were trying to get the university to be a better place, especially in the history department. There were quite a few that were really working, and they would encourage the students to be a little bit more radical, to give them a little bit more freedom and a little bit more flexibility, that they didn't have to look quite so radical themselves, but they could fill in the spaces.
A lot of faculty were also very supportive of us and very upset. John Israel in particular. So he was very supportive of it. A number of other liberal faculty members were very supportive of it. So now it's not just a dynamic where it's the students versus everybody else. We've got a fairly large portion of the faculty that is on board. And Edgar Shannon himself was not unsympathetic. It was pretty obvious to people who knew Mr. Shannon personally, I didn't at that time, but that he was genuinely conflicted about the situation. So there was a sense that the whole university community might be able to somehow come together on this issue and really send a message.
That we were so frustrated with the university administrators about the way they were lying about admitting women. They just kept coming up with all different kinds of dishonest reasons why we couldn't have women at the University of Virginia. So we were struggling to figure out, okay, what could we do? And we finally decided that if we bugged a UVA Board of Visitors meeting, and then they knew that we knew that they would have to shape up and change policy, because otherwise we would expose them. And probably, I'm not sure how the honor system would work, but probably the president would have to resign because he was deliberately and provocatively lying regularly about admitting women.
I actually was pretty impressed with Shannon. And when I was, I guess, first semester, the black students actually took over his office. At that time, the president's office was on the lawn. I think it was Pavilion 6. So we took over his office, and we had someone stationed at the university police with a walkie-talkie to let us know when they were coming, because we just knew we were going to be arrested. But to his credit, he did not call the police, and he walked around us and spoke to us, and and was very calm and friendly. And I give him a lot of credit for not taking that to the, if he'd called the police, obviously the situation potentially would have escalated.
The Alumni Association took a very anti-student position about the anti-war activities and sent letters. The Alumni Association sent letters to all of our parents, encouraging our parents to rein us in. People were really annoyed at the Alumni Association, and they played a very negative role in terms of supporting students, or at least leaving students alone. They acted very strongly against the interests of students.
A major professor who joined the history department my last year there, I didn't take any courses from him, but he was world renowned. And one day he just stopped me in the hall and asked if I'd like to have him write me a letter of recommendation. And I thought, wow, this guy's world renowned, and he must have talked to my advisors or some other professors and was going to write on my behalf. And I said, well, of course, I'd love to have that. But this guy who came up to me and asked if I'd like to have him put a letter in my file, and I, foolishly thinking, well, it'd be a positive one, said yes, wrote this terrible letter. I'd never had a class from him. He didn't know me at all. He just rumors about me. And that was not at all his character. He normally wouldn't do that. But these were just crisis kind of times in which people acted way out of their norm.
So there's a lot of faculty that were very supportive of what we were doing, provided intellectual background to what we were doing. They would speak, there would be people from the history department who would speak at rallies. I know when we got to the point where we were doing demonstrations and people were getting arrested, I spent a lot of time raising money from professors to pay bail. They would generously put their houses on a bail form to be able to get students out of jail. And there's a lot of interaction between students and faculty, and it was very rewarding.
But when people use positions of power to oppress people, and in my instance, to oppress me, but it was that I saw it over and over again of people being oppressed. I have a hard time forgiving that.